Estes. Welcome to our Eagles Talent video chat. Thank you for joining us today. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Sheldon. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Like an old Bob Dylan song, the times they are a-changing. So on that note, what do you think has been the biggest change for leadership in the past few years?
Well, I think leaders are dealing with a lot more complexity in the business. So keeping consistent with the Dylan theme, it's managing change.
Right.
And I think our leaders are overwhelmed with the pace of business, how fast the marketplace is moving, elevated expectations from customers and employees, and so it's a leadership today is a lot more complicated a job than it was even a few years ago. So I think navigating that complexity, making good decisions, and helping guide the business to results is what it really is all about. And that's really a big focus and concentration of what our core message is, giving leaders some tools and then actually practical case studies that they can draw on to help them navigate change and make good decisions.
Right.
So.
You recently wrote this, buyer attention is shifting, buying behavior is evolving, buyer expectations have never been higher. Buyer behavior is influenced through new and constantly evolving communication channels.
Right.
And you gave a great example of a sale via Twitter for an event, speaking event in Sacramento. Can you briefly tell a little bit about that, and then what's your message to sales?
Well, I'll kind of start with my message to sales. So all of the things that you said are true.
Right.
The customer, the buyer has changed. So my core message is when the buyer changes, we better change with it.
Right.
And I think one of the challenges that we see is that buyer sophistication, buyer competency has actually outpaced sales competency and the sales skill set. So we look to very specifically address that gap and close it. And the example that you're referencing, it was a very specific, straightforward example that just demonstrated how the use of social channels and specifically Twitter can elevate brand awareness, create connections, and it actually helped me personally close some training with the Sacramento Kings when I was in the marketplace. And so, if I always tell people, you got to meet people today where they are. And if your customers and prospective buyers are in those channels, it makes a whole lot of sense to think about your presence there also.
It seems like there can be a big jump from top producer in a company to being a leader. And being great at one probably doesn't mean you're going to be great at the other. So how hard do you think that transition is to being from being a producer to a leader?
Well, they're two entirely different jobs, and I think that's the first consideration. And we see sales organizations all the time make the mistake of putting a top producer into the leadership position,
right?
And that individual may not be prepared to make that shift or transition, and then you've really created a compounding problem. Meaning, you have a producing territory that may not be operating at optimal efficiency, and now you've got somebody that was a great employee that's just not prepared for their new role. So I think first the recognition that they are two completely different jobs, and then creating some understanding and awareness about what is the skill and competency required to be an effective leader in that organization, and then looking for how to guide people, if that's the objective, into that role in a way that makes sense. So making better decisions, better talent decisions, and preparing people, I think, are key.
So on that thought of a leader, what do you think are some of the key elements in creating a positive culture as a leader?
Yeah, I think, having great relationships with people is certainly important. I think having a vision, giving people confidence in the future of the organization, providing regular feedback, being present, visible, being authentic, being who you are. I think so many times new leaders get in the role and they try to immediately be the boss or be the manager, and I think that's a misstep or a mistake. I mean, you have to kind of be who you are, be real, be open. And I always say, if it involves people, involve them. People want a voice. They want to participate. They want to contribute. They want to be respected. And so I think when a leader can draw out all of those things, it puts people in a position to be successful. And the best leaders, they blend, I think, a desire for results with a lot of humility. I think a big part of leadership is recognizing that, it's not about you.
Right.
It's about helping other people succeed and putting other people in a position to be successful. And so, we help leaders think about it that way and then give them some actual practical tools that they can implement to get there. So that's what it's all about.
So let's think about human resources for a second.
Sure.
What are some really important trends that human resources really need to pay attention to, and how does that tie into them hiring?
Yeah, well, the biggest trend is that this is a great time to be in HR because it's a time where most organizations need HR to be on offense and to be a catalyst for change and to be vocal and I think talent and people decisions are having such a substantive impact on the readiness and the performance of the business that HR is really getting a lot of attention and focus. I mean, the C-suite's paying attention to it. I think, they're focused on kind of changing HR, putting HR in a different position in the organization, and companies that are talent-centric and that focused on getting the best people in the door and putting them in the right position to contribute, have an opportunity to move the market and succeed. So it's a great time to be in HR, but the role of the HR professional absolutely is changing. I mean, today it's about navigating change. It's about leveraging technology. It's about being innovative. It's about delivering HR from a position of influence.
So what's an example of like technology, leveraging the technology? How does that play a part?
Well, I mean, you look at how recruiting's changed.
Right.
I mean, it's all on the web now. So I think organizations that understand how to leverage technology and social media, both to acquire talent and also to make better business decisions. We have data that can, provide and inform, where we allocate resources and how we make future investments. And so I think leveraging technology to, make good business decisions and then to access the marketplace is something that HR really needs to be thinking about.
So as you look at the current generation entering the workforce, what's the biggest adjustment that you think they have to make? And then kind of flip that around. What's the biggest adjustment that you think companies have to make for this incoming generation?
Well, I'll take a step back.
Okay.
I think you position that question in a very good way because the reality is I think there's kind of legacy protocol in most industries and organizations, and I think it makes a whole lot of sense for us to spend time coaching this next generation as they enter the workplace. And I think, look, it's hard for millennials to understand. You have to put in the time. You have to pay your dues.
Right.
I think the average millennial is only in their job for 2 years.
Wow.
So in most cases, you're just hitting your peak potential of contribution after 2 years. So I think we look at the reverse mentoring and the reverse coaching as a big opportunity for both sides to listen and learn. So I think coming into it with that expectation is a good thing. So millennials they need to learn a little patience and. And they also need to learn, that it's not all about technology. That having face-to-face relationships, takes time, it takes effort, it takes investment, and I think that's a big piece of it too. And then look, as leaders in existing legacy organizations, we need to recognize the world is changing.
Right.
That 2-year number, that's the reality of this next generation. And so I think we have to think about how we're going to adjust just to, deal with the new realities of the future of work.
Well, you mentioned legacy early on. What do you think? No, we don't have a crystal ball, but what do you think the legacy of the millennials? What do you think their legacy is going to be in the workforce?
I think they're going to reinvent work. I think a lot of the traditional paradigms with respect to organizational structure, hierarchy,
Mm-hmm.
even where work is done is going to be
Yeah.
transformed as this generation comes of age. This generation, they're more prepared to contribute than any previous generation. They're diverse, they're educated, they're mobile, they have a lot to offer. And they're entrepreneurial. I think it's 43% of them plan to start their own business one day.
Right.
So, I think they have a lot to contribute, but they look at their relationship with work very, very differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think it's an
Well,
exciting time.
think about social media. Can we separate the sales and marketing like we used to? And also, I guess the second part of that is, what's the message to the leaders who are more traditional thinking with sales and marketing?
Yeah, so from a sales marketing perspective, no, you no longer can separate it like we used to.
Right.
It's fully integrated, and the top producers in the sales organizations we work with, they leverage all of the marketing capability. I mean, they're great marketers in and of themselves. So we've seen this real integration. They have to work hand in hand, and a big part of my message for traditional leaders is that it's time to change.
Right.
So
Back to Bob
I mean,
Dylan.
it's the traditional command and control, hierarchical, do what I say because I'm the boss just isn't as effective anymore. And so, we focus a lot on collaboration as a leadership style
Right.
that really is best suited for the new economy. And, I think that content resonates because there's recognition that it is time to change, but how you get there is also important too.
Yeah, as you travel around speaking and consulting and training, what are areas that businesses that you recognize they're in most need of help?
Yeah, I think leadership is a big one. There's a what I call a big trust deficit. I think we've got research that shows that only 39% of employees today have trust or confidence in senior leadership. That 65% of the U.S. workforce is actually classified as underengaged. So that's a pretty big disconnect. Between where management is today and the employee population. So I think bridging that gap, that's a huge thing. And then that transitions over to the next big area of focus and concentration, which is our relationships with customers. And our customers today have, elevating expectations. They're less loyal. They're, more price sensitive. So, both from a sales and service perspective, how do we acquire new customers and, how do we keep them loyal and engaged in the partnership?
Well,
And I think all of that plays out in a continuum, right? So.
well, and on that note, you've talked about the decision journey that a customer makes, that the customer goes through.
Right.
What is that decision journey they go through, and where is the opportunity?
Yeah, the decision journey. Customers are first. They're overwhelmed with information. So we're being inundated with messages, with information, and customers. I think, given the period of time that we're coming through, they're concerned about making a mistake, right? So we have access to more information. Customers can do their own research. They can get informed. I mean, the customer today, the buyer today, is actually a lot more sophisticated. He's also more price sensitive. He's also taking a longer time to make a decision. So the opportunity is to get into that decision cycle early, right? To be top of mind, to influence the research and the consideration phase. Branding, having a presence, communication, leveraging social channels, being considered an expert in your category. All of those things are important to influencing the decision up until the point where somebody's ready to make the buy. Because 60% of their decision happens before they come in contact with a selling organization. So that's where a lot of opportunity exists.
Well, Ryan, that's some great stuff and excellent content, good food for thought. And times they are changing. So that's the one thing that's constant, right? Change.
That change is constant, and if we can change with them, there's an abundance of opportunity in the market today. That's what it's all about.